I want to make a new sub-base for this router to work with these brass guide bushings. This set comes with an adapter that fits almost perfectly into this router, but I still feel like making my own sub-base, and I realized that not everybody has this exact router, so maybe you can take away something from this video. Now the interesting part about making a sub-base for a router is of course that the guide bushings and the outer perimeter have to be concentric with the spindle axis. But if you follow these steps, that should be pretty easy. I'll make it out of 6mm acrylic, which works perfectly for this application. It would be interesting to hear your material suggestions, so write them down in the comments. The bandsaw makes quick work of that acrylic, but a jigsaw would also work. Many routers, including this one, allow for the use of the existing sub-base as a template to get the screw locations. If that is not the case, for example when the sub-base is missing, there's another simple method, but I will make a separate video on that. A center drill would probably work, but I don't have one in the right size, so I'll use a transfer punch instead. These expanding transfer punches are just awesome. They are super accurate and adapt to any size hole. For really precisely located holes, it is best to leave the workpiece floating until the point of that drill has pulled it into the perfect location, and only then hold it down. And also you really want to cool that drill with water to keep the acrylic from melting. If you're afraid of a little bit of surface rust, you can always massage your beloved tools with a little bit of rose oil. And the holes line up perfectly, so next I'll mark the spindle axis. For this I'll use a centering pin. You can easily make one like that by chucking up a piece of shaft and grinding it to a point on some sort of grinder. Or just use a pointy router bit. And now that center mark is carefully transferred to the other side using this little drill bit. A viewer over at my German channel suggested a different method which I found pretty smart. If you happen to have a tiny end mill, you could use it to drill the hole using the router itself, which I'm simulating here. But whatever you do, this hole must under any circumstance be small enough for the point of the Forstner bit to center on. And that fit looks really good. So now the outer perimeter can be milled at the router table using a guide bushing as a center and a piece of scrap wood with an accordingly sized hole. The edges of those parts are really sharp, so I'm wearing gloves at the router table. Now I can carefully adjust the diameter by moving the fence of the router table. And now chamfering the edges. The holes in the base of that router are offset a little bit, so if you install the sub base the wrong way round, it will still fit, but the bushing will not line up with the spindle axis. These little screws do a phenomenal job of centering that sub base. I didn't necessarily expect that, but that's of course really good. Later I decided to add some holes for dust collection, because I had quite a good idea on how to extract that dust very effectively. But that's gonna be the topic of a separate video. And this is preparing the thumbnail for the video. and a subtle yellow spot in the background as an eye catcher. And now the base is done and can be used as intended for tracing shapes at any cutting depth required, which is the main advantage of those guide bushings over a guide bearing installed on a router bit. Now what I could do is cut this subbase off like this, which could be beneficial when there's only little space between the clamps that hold down the template, but I'm just going to leave it like that for now. And of course I also don't need those flat spots for guiding the router against the straight edge, because since the outer perimeter is concentric with the spindle axis, I can guide the router along a straight edge in whatever orientation I want to.